Hey, sorry about that confusion, folks. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you happen to be in the world. Welcome to Nerd Week Live here on YouTube, brought to you by us, the folks at Nerd Caliber. Um, and I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber. I am first-person shooter as a cosplay photographer. I'm also Burly Adopter on Twitter and a couple of other places, things like that. Joining me tonight is the Star Child himself. Oh, introduce
With
yourself, sir.
whatever side you're pointing at, yes, it's in that direction. It's Louis Correa, also known as Crash the Photos. I'm a co-producer with Nerd Caliber. I'm really happy at some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. We got some pretty good topics out here, but we really would like for some of you guys to chime in with us and have a nice conversation so we can go back and forth and get some of your opinions on some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Absolutely. And so, Luminous, welcome to the show. Counting down. Pennywise, welcome back. Crumby Pizza. Crummy Pizza, let's call it that. Welcome to the show. Adrian Hastings, welcome to the show. Uh, let's see, what do we got to talk about? We've got home mat stuff is coming up soon. Um, and my preview just sort of went weird. All right. Home mat stuff is coming up soon on the website and on YouTube. We will be. I think our next con is a Regia, which will be in middle January. Uh,
Yes, sir.
and then the excitement continues from there. Uh, so, with that, let's just jump right into this week's topics. We've got quite a few of them, as it turns out. Um, and the first one up is some anime news. We've got some anime news for our anime fans. Jacob, welcome to the show. Emily, welcome to the show. If you are an anime fan and you've been watching the last couple of seasons, you might have noticed that particular anime right there. That's Carol and Tuesday. Carol and Tuesday is from Cowboy Bebop, Kids in the Slope, etc. creator Samurai Champloo Shinichiro Watanabe, and it is a really solid anime set in a future that might be like the Cowboy Bebop future. They use the same currency and so on Mars, like much of Cowboy Bebop is. The news is, since this was region locked on Netflix and it's on Netflix, the news is that December 24th, we get the second part of season 1 of Carol and Tuesday for you to binge your hearts out on Netflix. So, yay.
Absolutely, yeah. I really enjoyed that show. I love the music, as you know, because we've talked about it before privately. But I do really enjoy animes with music in them, with like very thought out and paced out music that are integral to the show itself. And gives the music a nice platform as opposed to just being like some random background stuff. One of my favorites being Cowboy Bebop, which really played music in such a soulful and emotional way to emphasize a lot of the things happening in each episode. So I really can't wait to see the rest of this show, at least the rest of the first season, anyways.
Yeah, it's I love, just like Lewis, I love the music in Watanabe's various shows. I'm a big jazz fan, so Cowboy Bebop and Kids on the Slope were more of a musical hit for me. Um, but just like those two, the music, and this has a lot of original music. The two girls that were up there on the screen are musicians who are singer-songwriters that write their own stuff. And so these are original songs in almost every episode. And it's really pretty amazing. Um, say hi to your mom to me. We'll just call you Say Hi. Say hi, welcome to the show. Um, but it's really wonderful. I have to admit, I have a little bit of a problem with. I'm not a big fan of Watanabe's most recent prior to this show, which is Space Dandy. And I had a problem with some of the very Space Dandy humor elements that were in a number of the episodes. It just seemed really completely out of left field. Not like the kind of um, individual character-based humor that was in Cowboy Bebop, but there was a lot of humor and a lot of pathos and everything else in Cowboy Bebop. But this seems sort of like, hey, let's have funny robots and stick them in here. That's yeah. I thought that lessened the show, the enjoyment of the show for me, but that's just me. Adrienne, I do like the jazz. I like the jazz a lot. I love the fact that Kids on the Slope is set in the late 1960s and it has jazz from my favorite jazz period, the cool jazz period. Love cool jazz.
I too also enjoy jazz. Ink Spots being one of my favorite.
You can call the Ink Spots jazz.
I feel like they fall into that.
Nah. All right. We'll let you go with it. Anyway, so December 24th. If you're not doing anything for Christmas Eve, or if you need to then binge something on Christmas Day, it's there ready for you. And I do recommend checking it. Despite the few issues I've had with some of the humor, it is a great series. And the characterizations of the main characters are really cool. So I recommend checking it out. Sticking with that anime stuff. So we finally, this last week, heard when the second season of RE0 is going to drop, and that will be in April of this year. And if you are like me and you enjoy watching poor Subaru there suffer the worst, most horrible circumstances that anybody could possibly do in an isekai anime, then you're really looking forward to it. I know I am. And interesting to see where they take the story as they sort of explain a little bit more, at least that's the implication, of who it was that brought him into this other world and how that happened, and how what that person's relationship is to Amelia, the oftentimes not very well handled love of his life.
I've never seen it, but I've heard great things.
It's how do you describe it? It's amazing in that it has, in a whole series of isekai where everybody, like, they get in there and they're overpowered and they can do anything they want. He is so not overpowered. He has one special ability. It's not even, I don't even consider it a power. It's a curse as much as anything else. And in addition to that, he's pretty much a jackass. He is borderline. If this was made initially 2 years after it was made, he would have instantly been labeled as an incel. The only thing that keeps him from being called that all the time is he's written to be a very sort of clumsily charming jerk. And he pulls it off really well. The voice actor pulls it off very well. And his very slow progression to first just realizing what a jerk he is, and then getting a little, my hands are a little bit better. It's a fun watch. Yeah, fun. There are times when it's not fun at all. There's still moments in here that are just, I think about them and I just get chills. And not the, ooh, that was fun kind of chills.
So on a scale from Sasuke to Bakugo, where would you place him?
Yeah, he's kind of
Sasuke being a 1 and Bakugo being a pain in the ass 10.
So he's kind of not on that scale because Sasuke is still kind of he's still a competitor. And Bakugo is like the ultimate competition, and to the point where he's a bully. There is no, per se, competition. In the one instance where there is some kind of competition with Subaru and somebody else, is there a comparison in Naruto, or I'm trying to think of one in NHA, where the hero gets beat so badly that you can't even call him an antagonist at that point? That's the kind of, in that spectrum Subaru falls in. He doesn't fall in that spectrum, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah,
Hold on a
Adrian.
second.
I was trying to give
Pennywise.
him.
Yeah, the dude with the
I
twin
was,
maids. Yes, that's who
uh,
this is.
I was trying to give him a playful 1 to 10, but he wasn't falling into that 1 to 10 category.
Oh, I see, Adrian. 1 to 10 as far as a jerk. Um, in the kind of jerk that he is, he's a solid 6. That doesn't mean that he is anywhere approaching Bakugo level, because Bakugo isn't a jerk. Bakugo is a bully. Bakugo is somebody who, despite being consistently written as everybody believes he could be a hero, nobody who ever's interacted with him could possibly, in any way, shape, or form, believe he could be a hero. So, anyway, that's my Bakugo
I
rant.
thought Deku obsessively believed he could be a hero.
Yes. Um, Pennywise, you like Sailor Moon. Very cool. But now we're moving out of anime and we're moving into into movies. And just a couple hours ago, the first images from the long awaited, or long anticipated anyway, sequel to the Bill and Ted movies uh, showed up, and we've got the image of Death from the second movie, played by the same actor. All of these people, Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, um, are all the same actors,
That's what I thought.
and I think that's wonderful. The other images that drop. So we got this image. We got an image of Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter in the phone booth from the other two movies. But I really liked this next image, and I am going to. There we go. These are.
Pennywise, that
Oh,
dude is death.
yeah, didn't I said Death? Playing Death is. Oh yeah, that's Death. Um, like the Ingmar Bergman film Death. If you're any kind of a film snob, you can call that a fan. Um, oh, I see what you're doing. You're responding to Pennywise. Uh, yeah. Anyway, the images that popped up up here right now are their kids. So you've got Alex's daughter on your right, and Thea Preston, played by Samara Weaving, and you've got um, Ted's daughter, uh, Bill's daughter. I'm sorry, Thea Weaving, and Ted's daughter, Billy Logan, played by Bridget Lundy Payne from the wonderful Netflix show Atypical. Um, Luminous. Hope Bill and Ted are excellent to each other. I do too. Um, but I'm really glad that they brought in these kinds of characters to the show. I really like Bridget Lundy Payne. She is wonderful in the show Atypical. I can't recommend it enough, particularly if you want to see a very interesting sort of family dynamic take on atypical neurological characters. And in this case, her brother is on the spectrum and a wonderfully done character in that show. Um, they look like adults. You mean the kids? Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, they're. I'm assuming they are late teen or college age kids, um, considering how
Yeah,
long it's been since. Hmm?
late teen.
Yeah. Um, which is what the age range they play in most of the stuff they've been in. So I'm guessing they're somewhere in that probably young 20s, because everybody in Hollywood plays young. Anyway, that movie is coming out June of this coming year. So if you are old like me and you like the Bill and Ted movies, go check it out.
If you're young like me, then you can also enjoy those movies because they go across the range for everyone. Although it's going to be pretty wild after so long of getting used to John Wick and all those characters with a beard to see Keanu Reeves like clean shaven and just baby faced yet again.
Oh yeah, we're talking playing high school characters and believably playing high school characters in the first movie. Um, it's it's really worth watching, but there's so many anachronisms in there, like the whole phone booth. There aren't that many phone booths around anymore, or there's a lot of people in the audience probably don't really know who George Carlin is, and so when someone like me watched it the first time, it's oh my god, it's George Carlin, this is so fantastic, and there you go, it's like, wow, who's the old guy with a beard? Um, the Luminous, the writing in the Bill and Ted movies was surprisingly excellent. And
Bum.
and you have to do the guitar thing whenever you say that. Excellent. You'll get it if you watch the movie. All right, moving on to now we're on to some TV stuff. First trailer for the upcoming Dracula series on the BBC. So I'm assuming BBC America dropped. It is a series done by the guys that did Sherlock Holmes. So it is Steve Moffat and the other guy whose name I absolutely never ever remember, Mark Gatiss. Because I don't remember that because Moffat then also does Doctor Who, which I watched a lot, as opposed to Sherlock, which I didn't. And the guy in the picture, the guy playing Count Dracula, I'm gonna go with his name is Cleese, Claes Bang. Possibly the best character or actor name in years.
Yeah, that's a name.
Adrian, oh my God, yes, you're looking forward to the Doctor or the Dracula series. Is that because you like the Dracula mythos, or because you liked Sherlock Holmes and you're looking forward to what these guys do, or both? Let me know.
So I'm going to assume that this show is a period piece. Is it a mini series, or is it like a seasonal?
It's a seasonal series. The idea is now it's Netflix, so it's going to drop all at once. So you'll get to watch the whole thing.
So I was reading fairly recently that Netflix is looking to adopt the weekly, re-adopt the weekly release. So this could be something that falls under that like weekly release.
You are right, and I stand corrected. They are going to follow the weekly release pattern of the BBC. So what happens is it'll air on the BBC January 1st, and then 3 days later, that episode will hit Netflix, and it will follow that throughout the course of season 1. So it will be weekly episodic.
You guys heard that, right? December 17th, 2019 at 8:18. He said I was right. We write that down. Okay,
Write
that's
that
my
down.
birthday.
I've said you're right. I said you're right when you told me that these LEDs were amazing. I may not have done it in public. That's a good point. But Adrienne, and I'm butchering your name. I'm going all over the different ways of pronouncing Adrienne, so my apologies. Doctor Who, cool, awesome. Anthony, speaking of Netflix, isn't Witcher out on Friday? Yes, Anthony, it is.
Yes.
We didn't talk about that this week because they haven't released anything particularly new about it, but that's a good point. Thanks for reminding everybody.
Unfortunately, everybody is kind of like Witcher, Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, exactly. Which are you going to go do? Do both, I say, or at least do at least one episode of Witcher. And in fact, while this season is coming up, it is in fact only 3 episodes long. So I guess it is a miniseries. 2, Lewis. 2, you're right.
Do. And to paraphrase another vampire,
Luminous, I hope it's good, but I think Stephen Moffat's writing has been uneven. For example, he did a Jekyll and Hyde series, which I found disappointing. I didn't see any of that Jekyll and Hyde series. I know that he got a lot of guff for some of the writing he did, particularly the way he handled female characters when he was on the showrunner and primary writer of Doctor Who. So, yeah. But he also was the primary writer, along with Gatiss, of Sherlock Holmes. So
it's not inconsistent to say or it's not wrong to say that he's inconsistent in some of his works.
Yes. And Pennywise, thank you for getting that completely wrong. That tells Lewis and me that our impression of the Count from Sesame Street was so bad that you thought it was the chef from the Muppet Show. We fail.
Or it was so good,
Or is
so good
there
that
you go. So good that people started hallucinating other characters. That's a good way to look at it.
maybe Pennywise just wants Swedish meatballs. Maybe they're hangry.
That could be. That could be. All right. Moving past Dracula. So, Dracula, um, January 4th on Netflix. Weekly episodes, but there's only 3 in this first season. So, check it out. And by the way, you're right, Lewis. Netflix does do that when they pick up a show that's being aired currently, as opposed to waiting to pick something up like a whole season afterwards. They did it with the fantastic Mr. Sunshine, a Korean historical drama set in the early 1900s, and I can't recommend that enough. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. Anyway, moving on to our next topic. We have that is somebody I had no idea. I'd never even heard of this character. That is Dr. Aphra. Not obviously Darth Vader. That's Darth Vader, or Chewbacca. That's Chewbacca. The person giving off these sort of tank girl vibes is Dr. Aphra, a character that was a pretty short-run, initially side character in the Darth Vader comic, who has become an insanely popular character, has her own comic book now, is this very anti-hero character who has worked for both the Rebellion and the Empire. And there is a rumor, and I cannot emphasize enough rumor, that Marvel and Lucasfilm, Marvel because it's based on a Marvel comic character, are already in production on a Star Wars show to go on Disney Plus featuring Dr. Aphra.
I 130% approve if that's a thing. I've read the comic books, the Darth Vader comic books with Dr. Aphra. I've read the Dr. Aphra comics. They're incredible. It's just the writing is superb. The character is so just very inclusive, but also diverse at the same time. Like there's a lot of things that people in with a lot of Star Wars characters, they tend to go in one direction or one or two directions in terms of personality. Dr. Aphra is one of those people that like had the stones to approach Darth Vader and work for Vader. You know, Vader sought her out initially, and then Dr. Aphra was like, "Yeah, you're gonna hire me because you need people to do things for you," you know. And there's actually a point in the Vader comic where Vader is looking at her like they're just kind of like eyeballing each other after like 2 missions, and she just like tells him like, "Yeah, I know you're gonna kill me one day. Like this just it's certain like fate that you're just gonna cut me down one day because you can't have someone like me who's a loose cannon who can turn on you at any time." Like existing, but at the same time, you respect me so much at this point that you simply are just gonna wait till the last minute when I'm not looking. So like she just says like, you know, flat out, when you decide to kill me, but kill me without me knowing. Like send someone to kill me or you just cut me down yourself, but like out of respect for me, just do it that way. And I thought that was like the coolest thing cuz like seldom has anyone ever stood in front of the Dark Lord of the Sith and just been that ballsy enough to like just call him out to his face.
Adrienne is all excited about Chewbacca. I'm looking at the image now, and that's a very dark fur. I'm not sure that's necessarily Chewbacca, because you would think that might be C-3PO, but 3PO that's silver, not gold. So who knows?
The robot in the background, the two
Yep.
robots are Dr. Afro's robots. They're assassin droids.
Oh,
One
cool.
Yeah, one is a converted protocol droid and one's a converted astromech droid. The astromech droid is hilarious because it literally just wants to murder everything 100% of the time. Think think like IG-88 or I can't remember the name of the droid from the Old Republic that always called everybody meatbags. But that droid, that little droid, there's one particular panel in the comic where they're deciding to kill someone like in stealth wise, and the droid opens up every like port it has and has like missiles, like laser Gatling guns, and they're just like, no, 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 we're not killing everyone in the room.
Or like IG-11, if you've seen the early episodes of The Mandalorian. No spoilers, so I won't tell you what happens there. But um,
Moving on.
Luminous
Snow
says that
Crash.
Afra has their own action figure. Cool. So here's why I think that I'd be surprised to see this happen. The character is set during Darth Vader's time on the Empire, so it would be set either prior to the A New Hope. Actually, do we know what the time frame is?
Right before New Hope.
Okay.
Usually, that's when, if I recall correctly, that's when she gets recruited. That right before New Hope, because it kind of transitions into her doing a lot of work for Vader prior and post.
So I don't know that they want to set something in A New Hope where they would have to deal with potentially with showing characters that existed at that time. And two, I'd be really surprised if Disney Plus has a lesbian anti-hero with two murder droids as a main character on a Disney Plus show. That just,
So I can understand your perspective, but a few things. She tends to work for him in the outer rim, and a lot of the heroes tend to be mid to core. So like she might run into like Han Solo maybe, but like no one really past that. Like Leia and stuff like that wouldn't necessarily be a thing.
yeah.
Um, and especially before A New Hope. But also in the Star Wars universe, there is no gay. That's something that they canon-wise said, and one of the creators of Dr. Afra also pointed out, because Dr. Afra, the creator, is like she's gay, but she's not gay, in that she has an enjoyment of women, but because gay doesn't exist in the Star Wars universe, because everyone is progressively like this is whatever your sexuality is your sexuality in Star Wars.
Yeah.
You want to like
So I want to make sure that
this is
nobody gets the
something I'm
wrong.
paraphrasing.
Just saying, I want to make sure nobody gets the wrong impression. There are lesbians, there are homosexual men, women, and so on. They just don't view sexuality as something that needs to be defined by your choice of a type of partner. So, to that sense, the way what Lewis is right, there's no gay in that there is no straight. It's just whatever you want from a sexual standpoint. Um, I was hearing that, and I could very clearly hear somebody eventually, like even Pennywise coming in. What about bi? None of those terms apply, is what Lewis is saying,
Right.
because
I
they
was, I
don't
was getting I was
divide
getting
people
to
up
that.
like that. Yeah.
I was working my way towards that.
Okay. Sorry to jump in on you then.
Yeah. So basically, as the writer for Dr. Afra and the creator of Dr. Afra stated in an interview, in the Star Wars universe, that doesn't exist. Everyone progressively no longer recognizes sexuality in that sense. You be with whoever you want to be. It doesn't. There's no bi. There's no straight. There's no gay. You be with whoever you want to be. But she was speaking in the sense of being the creator of the character. That's how she envisions Dr. Afra as gay. That she likes women.
Yeah.
So Star Wars doesn't have to go into her sexuality at all in a show because there's no necessary need to.
That's true. That's a good point. Um, so yeah. So getting to the article, it's basically, like I said, just complete rumor. Comes from a source that has been correct a number of times in the past, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this person uh, has it this time. So just patiently wait and see whether or not some announcement about this happens. By the way, the rumor says, or the person behind the rumor says, that It's not only that that this is going to happen. They are actually filming already, which means that it would be something that would come out at some point in 2020. Um, and
Yeah,
if that's true,
I
that's
wouldn't.
pretty amazing.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is a real thing that it would pop up like after the Mando, after like a month or two. Like Mando ends, and we're gonna announce this new show that's gonna come out with Doctor Aphra. And I
Hey,
highly recommend, if you have a free moment and you have the money, pick up the comic, the Doctor Vader,
Doctor
Darth
Vader.
Vader comics, because they're fantastic. That they also have Doctor Aphra, and pick up Doctor Aphra's comics because they're also incredible.
Do what he says, folks. All right, moving on to our next topic. This is Neil Stephenson, the author of the book, well, many books, but particularly the book Snow Crash. And the reason there's a picture of this dude up here instead of like something from Snow Crash is that nobody's really done any adaptation of Snow Crash that would have anything other than like fan art. And I don't want to just pull some guy's DeviantArt account up onto here. But the news is that apparently HBO is going to try to adapt this book, Snow Crash. It's a science fiction book into a TV. I'm trying to see if the article says movie. If it's HBO, they usually do. Well, they do movies too. Um, so this is interesting. The director Joe Cornish, who directed Attack the Block and The
Hmm.
Kid Who Would Be King, is attached to it. Which I guess would make sense. So the reason nobody's ever done this is that most of the book takes place inside uh, a cyberverse, an internet connected virtual reality. Um, and up until they made an adaptation of Ready Player One, most people just assumed that couldn't be done.
The
Um,
Matrix.
yeah, that's true. Except the Matrix was almost entirely intended to be physically real appearing to everybody that's in it, because that's the point of the Matrix. Um, Snow Crash, like Ready Player One, many years after it. Snow Crash was written way before then. Um, it's all kinds of wild stuff going on inside this. It's whatever you want to be, basically, just like Ready Player One. Um, so it was and has been, and it's also a very challenging um, story to adapt. Um, Neil Stephenson does not write simple adventure plots. Um, so good on HBO for trying to do this. I think it's the right time. I mean, obviously the technology is there for them to be able to do this. The question is whether or not they can adapt this and not turn it into just sort of a young person's adventure story and make it the story about drugs and addiction and all of the other things that were core to Snow Crash. Luminous, is Snow Crash cyberpunk? Yeah, it's very much cyberpunk. Um, Neil Stephenson was right there in the birth of cyberpunk, along with William Gibson. Um, authors like him and Gibson were writing this sort of stuff right around the same time. Um, so Snow Crash is very influential on the whole cyberpunk genre.
Yeah.
Uh,
And Pennywise, to answer your question real quick, yes, there is. There's another one called Yaddle that retired before the Jedi Purge.
yeah, and you get to see Yaddle once. Yaddle was on the council, so you get to see Yaddle once on one of the council scenes where, so it must have been in Clone Wars in the second movie, so where the sort of teenage Anakin um,
Hmm.
is standing there. Probably the scene where he's getting told that he's still not ready to be made a Jedi Master. So,
Yeah,
um,
and then she retired.
and yes, and then Yaddle retired. Uh, so I don't know whether Yaddle avoided Order 66 because we never see Yaddle in anything. Maybe Yaddle will make an appearance. Haven't
Yeah,
seen Rise of
they
Skywalker.
never like allude to what happened to Yaddle.
Yeah. Um, Adrian, I love Ready Player One. Yeah, I agree. I think Ready Player One was really cool. I think it suffered a little bit from being too much of a Steven Spielberg movie at times. Um, so there were moments where it was way too Goonies for a movie that was, you know, from a book that at that point in the book was pretty serious stuff. But all in all, it makes sense to make it kind of a Goonies movie because it's just got so much.
I only ever read the book. I've never gotten around to watch the movie, but I've heard that it's very comparable. But from what I've seen, I definitely picked the book over the movie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's no way you could go into all of the references and things that happen in the book in a 2-hour movie. But um, yeah, aside from
Well,
those, like, good.
there's that, and then if I've also heard it mentioned that they changed the look of some of the characters. So I'm never a fan when you erase diversity.
Now, I thought it was an amazingly diverse cast. So if that's the case, then whoever they changed, that's too bad. That's unfortunate. Um,
I'll probably pin this conversation until I watch the movie.
yeah, there you go. But anyway, so Snow Crash is going to be sort of like, imagine, Ready Player One meets oh, I can't think the name of the movie. Jared Leto as a drug addict.
Oh, that narrows it down.
Good point. Um, anyway, yeah, it's way more serious from a personal standpoint than Ready Player One. Um, anyway, moving on to our next topic, and now we're getting back to movies, but animated movies. So the trailer for the upcoming Warner Brothers DC adaptation of the Red Sun graphic novel just dropped, and it looks fantastic. It looks like they are continuing their policy of, animation is where Warner Brothers actually knows how to make DC movies and make them really well. And this is one of the great sort of Elseworld style stories in the DC canon. What if that spaceship carrying baby Kal-El crashed in a wheat field in the middle of Russia, not in the middle of Kansas? And what kind of world would happen after that? And it's wonderful.
Yeah, such a great graphic novel. It was incredible. So thought out, so thought provoking. And it is true. Like with the exception of outlier movies like The Killing Joke, for example, they tend to hit the nail on the head like I don't know, 95% of the time in terms of like the way they transition the books and the comic book series into movies. And this one looks, by the trailer, looks really rock solid.
Yep. Yeah, I would for adaptations of graphic novels like that. I would their adaptation of All Star Superman. Um, Go watch that and watch it again. That's just perfect. Um, their adaptation of Flashpoint.
Yeah,
Um, wonderful.
Tower, Tower of Babel,
Yep,
um, Outsiders. Like
I
they
haven't
tend
seen
to
that
do
one.
really, yeah, they tend to do really solid adaptations, which is what I enjoy the most. Which always kind of, not to bust their balls a little bit, but it's like maybe you should just get the people who make the damn cartoons and have them make a damn movie, like a real live action movie.
You would think so. You would think that would happen. Luminous. Luminous says the Red Sun graphic novel was pretty dark. I wonder if the movie will water it down. I've not watched the recent DC animated movies, so I don't know how dark they get. Um, so it's they
Like
get pretty
The
dark.
Justice Lord, yeah, the Justice Lord one, like that that was the epitome of like dark. Vampire Batman was not trying to play games when he bit and murdered people.
That's true. And
Superman folded people more times than laundry.
that's a good point. Yeah, that one was really dark and violent. The
So was Flashpoint. because they showed the Shazam kids getting.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm assuming now that it's not going to be fully dark, like um, Killing Joke, as Lewis mentioned, toned things down slightly, and then of course added that stupid Batgirl thing at the beginning, which was completely unnecessary. Um, but that kind of makes sense just because of the violence, the sexual nature of the violence that happens, particularly to Barbara Gordon. I can see why you would want to bring that down a little bit. But as far as like other violence to other characters, including children, as Lewis points out, yeah, they don't hold back on interpreting what was in the graphic novel for those. So check it out, Red Sun. Premiere date. I should have had this up while I was chatting. Coming in 2020, but does it say when in 2020? It does not. Although the article does describe this as possibly the best known Elseworlds tale ever. That might be true.
I would put it up there with Kingdom Come.
That's true. That's true. Early 2020 is what is as close as they can get in this article.
Yeah, so that's what early 2020, four quarters, like spring.
Yeah, early 2020 usually means end of first quarter, early into the second quarter. So yeah, sometime right around mid March to early April. Moving on to our next topic. Okay, we're down to our last two topics, and these two are kind of controversial topics. Um, that is a screenshot from the game Sunken City, which is very much based on Lovecraft's work. And it was kind of the best shot I wanted to put up there instead of just a picture of Lovecraft's head or another shot of Cthulhu. Because what's happening is potentially another graphic novel adaptation, and that is the two geniuses behind the final season of Game of Thrones. Well, actually, all of Game of Thrones. They were the showrunner for the whole thing. Benioff and Weiss uh, apparently are developing for Warner Brothers a movie based on a graphic novel called Lovecraft, which the premise of which is what if H.P. Lovecraft was right and wasn't just making this stuff up, but was actually seeing all of these eldritch gods, ancient ones, fish people, sunken cities, etc., etc. And the problem is that the graphic novel has as its main character H.P. Lovecraft, because he's the one that's seeing all of this, and it sets up the idea that he wasn't making it up. And H.P. Lovecraft was one of the most foul, racist scumbags to ever put pen to paper. There is stuff that he wrote that we couldn't say on this channel in public as like pamphlets and treatises, aside from all of the problematic stuff that he has in his stories and novels. So yeah, they're working on the series that's going to have like one of the worst one of the worst card carrying racists of the 20th century as a main character.
So here's my brief take on this, because this is such a complex thing to approach, and I know a lot of people like to divest the creator from the work, and clearly we see that all the time, anyways. My thing is that it's kind of a tricky angle to approach, because yes, it is Lovecraft that's going to be in the show, but it's a characterization of Lovecraft, because the real Lovecraft didn't see this stuff. He wrote it as a fiction. So for me, it's kind of a difficult thing, because when you're making a characterization of someone, just like the penny cowboys of Buffalo Bill and stuff like that. Like, Buffalo Bill was not a great person, but the characterization of it, and actually, the boys, even though Lovecraft is a real person in the show and the comic book, The Boys, when if for a second we assume that all those heroes were real as opposed to fictional, all of them are racist, anti-Semitic superheroes to begin with, and then a lot of their characterizations in the in-world comics removed all of that and made them heroic. That's not to say that I wouldn't like. I would think it would be awesome if maybe they did include all of that. If they included all of his like racism and anti-Semitism and all of that stuff in this characterization. But if they don't include it, I'm not going to be necessarily upset about it.
Yeah, I think at this stage in society, we don't need a fictionalized version of a character known to be a racist jerk that could potentially, for people who are only exposed to this interpretation of him, hide the fact that he was actually a racist jerk. Um, I mean, it's taken us how long, how many decades upon decades to realize, what a monster Christopher Columbus was, and to have somebody then go out and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to make this movie in which Christopher Columbus is the main character, and he comes and actually discovers, El Dorado, because so it's completely fictional, and that was a thing, a myth of the time that was going around. And you go, yay! It's like, yeah, but unless you make him a guy who was willing to basically murder and enslave an entire indigenous population, everyone he met, then you're hiding who the character really was, um, by fictionalizing him just for the sake of making a popular sort of fantasy movie. And that's what it sounds like they would be doing with Lovecraft if they don't make him a racist. If they make him a racist and you're perfectly willing to hate the character while you're fascinated with the horrors that he's discovering, I'm fine with that. I agree with you.
See,
I'd watch
I
that.
have I have difficulty with that purely because I feel that not every characterization of a real person has to accurately portray them all the time. You know, Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah,
We know
well,
it.
good point. That's a good point. But that's a farce. And that's a satire that is using this interpretation of the character to basically make fun of what the character and his entire society and structure believed in. And again, that's not what they're doing here. They're making a story, potentially, we don't know for sure, that has a horrible person as a main character who is probably not going to be portrayed as a horrible person, but not for the sake of making fun of what he was horrible about. That's what Jojo Rabbit
Sure.
does.
But the thing with Jojo Rabbit, having that I've seen Jojo Rabbit fairly recently, is yes, we can say it is satirical because it is a farce and it is satirical. But also, if you watch the entire movie, there are large sections of that movie where there is nothing satirical about what Adolf is saying or doing.
True, true. So again, if either this Lovecraft show is a satire of the kind of attitude that Lovecraft had, make him completely, well, the idea is he's not insane, that he's actually seeing these things, um, or they're fairly honest about his, horrible nature. Again, I'd buy those. Um, Not making it a satire, so you're making fun of his horrible beliefs, or hiding his horrible beliefs. Yeah, we'll have to agree to disagree on this one. I don't think I would. I don't think this should be made, much less I would watch it. Why YouTube? Why would you hide a statement like "No one likes racist people"? I think that's fine to put out there. That works for me. Nightcore Nightmare, welcome to the show. You missed most of it, to be honest. We talked about Snow Crash being made into a movie. We talked about Dr. Aphra from the Darth Vader comics possibly being made into a Disney Plus TV series. We talked about the BBC Dracula series coming to Netflix. Let me scroll back up here. What else did we talk about? We talked about a bunch of things. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Carol and Tuesday, RE0 coming, season 2 coming in April. Carol and Tuesday, the second part of season 1 dropping December 24th on Netflix. That pretty much covers it in the fast. You know, we could get through this in like 5 minutes, Lewis. Just like did that. Wouldn't be as exciting. All right, moving on to our next topic. And this one does have an awful lot of layers, folks. So, huge controversy about season 3 of American Gods, and we'll start out with what is absolutely known. That character, Orlando Jones's interpretation of Mr. Nancy, will not be in season 3. And then, as it turns out, we just found out that in addition, that character, and I'm not going to try to say the actor's name because I'm going to butcher it because it's a wonderful Arabic name, plays the character Jin, and Jin will not be in the upcoming season, which lends credence to Orlando Jones's complaint about the fact that he was fired, and possibly because of race. You've got two characters who are both darker skinned characters, African and Middle Eastern, and they are not in the upcoming season. The actor who portrays Jin has described it the same way American Gods described it, and the way Orlando Jones does say he was told about it, that they did not pick up his option for this coming season. But he also calls it straight up, that means he got fired. Because he says that his interpretation of Mr. Nancy, in particular the first speech you ever see him deliver in season 1, where he incites a bunch of slaves on a Dutch slave ship heading to the American colonies to rise up, kill everybody on the ship, and burn it to the water, was too radical for the people in charge of the show now. And that might be the case. So
there's been a lot of interesting information coming out about this that I've been kind of like looking in my free time. Now, I'll begin with what I'm going to say with what the writer, the showrunner, has said. And I'm going to paraphrase it briefly, in that the showrunner has said that Mr. Nancy, the story had progressed to a point where Mr. Nancy wasn't going to be in that season because Mr. Nancy, at that point in the story, in the graphic novel, is not there, present in what that area would be.
Novel, not graphic novel.
Right. Well, novel. Well, there is a graphic novel. As far as I know, there is a graphic novel, a novelization, and now the series. But I'll look into that later.
All right.
Anyway, because I don't want to go off the rails on my point here. So, regardless of which, in the novel, they're at a point now where Mr. Nancy wasn't going to be a part of the story. He would come in a little later on. They sort of use the same excuse for the Jinn in saying that as well. That the Jinn wasn't going to be in that particular part of the story, and that's why they didn't bring them back. That's what they're saying. Things that Orlando Jones have said, and the actor who plays the Jinn, who I feel like we keep referring to that way because we don't want to try to pronounce his name and butcher it, but that could be just me.
So this can't be that time. Musa Kraish. There we go.
Musa Kraish.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, sure, we can say, yeah, that's actually a very logical way of approaching it, etc., etc., etc. That makes the most sense. But the way Orlando Jones was told, in that they kept him waiting for months and months and months, and then fired him, forcing him to turn down several jobs that he had been offered because he was waiting to hear back to be Mr. Nancy in this current season, is BS. But also, one thing that a lot of articles are leaving out is that Orlando Jones was a writer after season 1. He participated and he helped produce the stuff that a lot of the minority characters were saying. So Jin, Mr. Nancy, things like that. He was writing. He was writing those things, or assisting in writing those things, and he wrote a lot of Mr. Nancy's line in season two, because as he stated that there wasn't a lot of people there working with him, so he had to come up with all those lines. So he figured this is something that Mr. Nancy would be angry about and would talk about. And if you watch it, his writing is superb and dynamic, and it sticks you with so many uncomfortable truths. And it just slaps you in the face with them. Like many of his speeches have been like incredible. So I'm more willing to believe Orlando Jones, having been terminated because he was being too pro-black and too willing to go with those uncomfortable truths. And it's, for me, I think, as someone who aspires to be a writer at times and has written scripts in the past, I think it's a real pain in the ass when someone tells you it's okay, you write what you think your character needs to write, and then you get fired for doing exactly what you were told to do. Anybody who's ever worked a job who has a supervisor who says, you do what you need to do, and then fires you for doing the things that you need to do, feels exactly the same way.
And realistically, the character in the book, Mr. Nancy, is the humanoid version of the African spider god Anansi, who is a trickster god and a spider, so full of venom, a venomous character. Um, to have Orlando Jones writing Mr. Nancy as somebody who is both sort of a trickster and angry, full of venom, it's in character. I mean, it makes sense for a show that has expanded on the characters as they were presented in Neil Gaiman's book. So, yeah, I get that point, and I agree that if they asked him to write his own stuff and stuff for other characters of color, which they did in season 2, and then went, yeah, you know what, that was just a little bit too much color for season 3, that's awful.
Sure.
I'll
And
give.
I'll add a little bit of something to that, what you just said, because Mr. Nancy being a spider, it's venomous. Also, it's very important to understand, in context of American gods, you're only as powerful as the people who worship you. So when slavery came and took people from Africa to various European countries and North America and so on and so forth, that destroyed the myth of Mr. Nancy, of Anansi. So he has every right to be pissed off, because his people would be happy and worshiping him most likely still at this point if Europeans and Dutch and all of them haven't come in and taken slaves. So he has every right. Like a good thing to notice, which a lot of people don't point out from season 1 going into season 2, is every outfit that Mr. Nancy has worn has been the tribal colors of a tribe that worshipped him.
That's
So
very cool. I
all
didn't
his
know that.
suits, the color, yeah, all the suits, the person who created those suits did the color theme to every tribe that's ever worshipped him.
Just like Mekiel, you're welcome for the podcast. Thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed it. So there is absolutely, knowing the way productions work in Hollywood, there is every possibility that at some level, what this new showrunner Egley, Chick Egley, I believe is his name, was saying about where the story is going and whether they need the characters of Nancy and the Jinn and others in this arc may be true. It's also a thing in Hollywood where if you've got really popular characters, and boy, Mr. Nancy is popular for fans of this show, you find a way to at least give them, a bit in, 1 or 2 episodes. So you bring them back on for a season. And that's not what they did here. It might be for money, because sure, there may be racism there, but almost everything in Hollywood is for money. It's the way it goes. Um,
Absolutely.
but it's also just it's the kind of thing that a lot of other shows have done. You write a character for at least one episode just so that character will have their presence in the upcoming season, even if it wasn't that way so much in the original source material that you're taking it from. So
Yeah. Not to mention, and let's be a little truthful here in the sense that if you really weren't going to have that actor return for that character using the excuse that you used, you waited several months to almost the show coming back to let him know that he was terminated. So you let him promote a show that he is no longer a part of using the character Mr. Nancy for promotional purposes. So him emulating that character that he's put so much time and effort in writing, developing, and acting, you milked it, and then you cut him off, and then you're gonna say, well, he wasn't gonna be in the show past this point, anyways. Like you're creating a farce here. You're lying when you're saying that because you used him for promotional purposes. You almost implied to the audience that he was going to be in that season by allowing him to promote himself as being a part of that season and saying, "Well, on season whatever is coming out," and that's insulting.
that's very insulting. And he says that he was actually um, on the roster of appearing at conventions with other cast members. In fact, the actor who plays the main character, Shadow Moon, um, while these people knew that he was not going to be coming back for the next season, and they didn't tell him that. So one of the things that one of the things that slightly puts a ding in his argument about this new show, Charles Egley. I think it's Chick in some other like a nickname in
I think
Hollywood because he's been
I,
around
I think
forever.
that's his
Yeah.
nickname. Yeah.
Um, uh, that might put a ding in the argument that he's doing this primarily for racist reasons. Is that the main character is a black man, and obviously they're not going to change that. But then again, he is the main character. He's already been cast. He's a black man in the book, so I guess they can't. Um,
Well, see, the thing is from what I've read from what Orlando Jones has said, he feels it is a race issue, but it's not necessarily the race issue that we seem to be approaching it from. He's talking about he wanted to continue Mr. Nancy doing the uncomfortable truths, and the new showrunner wanted him to fall in line and not do like the new Mr. Nancy, whoever will maybe take over the role, is going to be a more Hollywood streamlined person who might say some problematic things here and there about bad things, but it won't go as deep and as raw as Orlando Jones has.
yeah,
And that Orlando Jones is a bit like racism here because it's a white guy trying to control the narrative of how black people should feel.
that's a good point. And the showrunner has said that he knows how to write from the black male perspective. He's a 78-year-old white guy from Connecticut, so not sure that's quite so much true. Adrienne, not a fan of spiders, I take it. You only see Anansi, the spider version of Mr. Nancy, a couple of times. Um,
Here and there. He's sometimes in the background of some episodes as a spider, like
right,
dangling in the corner.
yeah. And he's actually, it's very, his colors are usually like this, very, sort of purple and green, and he's kind of a cute little spider. Um,
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's it. If they bring
Oh,
the character back, it's clearly not going to be Orlando Jones.
true.
He's
And
burned that
to
bridge.
to answer the last question here, Mick, y'all, we already touched upon that, but I'll reiterate it real quickly for you. They said that they had gone into production knowing they weren't going to pick him up, but that's argumentative at the very least because they never notified him that he was not going to be picked up until the season was wrapped, like the season was done and all set up. So they went a couple months. So in other words, if you had a job with me, and then I said I'm going to lay you off, but I'm going to bring you back when the spring or the season, wherever when business picks back up again, And then right when that season comes around, I give you a call and I say, hey, sorry, we're not taking you, but also we plan on never taking you from the get go. You literally missed out on a whole ton of jobs, which is one of Orlando Jones's biggest gripes, is he missed out on a ton of work because they dangled him like this.
Right.
So I don't agree that that they actually did that. I think I agree with what he's saying in that they cut him because they wanted to bring someone more in line with what the belief is now.
Yeah, I think that's actually what Mikhail is saying. It seems like that they went into production knowing that they weren't picking him up. Um, anyway, we are way long here. We're over an hour, and so we're going to wrap it up on, unfortunately, that note. Stay tuned for this, folks. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Whether or not American God survives into or past a season 3. They had
It's going to be a really tough sell after this stellar season of Watchmen.
they had so many people bail, actors bail on their characters after season 1 when they got rid of the first showrunner. And you know, it was tough. They basically turned it into a show that was primarily focused on Shadow Moon's wife, which in season 2 anyway, who is a minor character in the book. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for the wonderful questions in chat. Um, uh, Thanks for being with us. I hope you all have wonderful holidays. Our next show would be the evening of Christmas Eve, so I'm pretty sure we're not going to do one next week. Because we could skip
Hmm?
before that and after that, but so we're going to skip next week. We will see you all. The one after that is then New Year's Eve.
Uh, I can definitely do a Christmas if you want to do a Christmas, but or Christmas Eve. But it's up to you guys. I'm
uh,
pretty flexible on my time.
you know what? We'll do a Christmas Eve show. We'll try to come up with something fun and different for anybody who wants to be on here. We won't go an hour because it's Christmas Eve. But so we'll
Yeah.
see any of you out there coming on back on Christmas Eve. I'm Rodney Brown, editor in chief of Nerd Caliber. I was joined by.
Louis Correa, co-producer with Nerd Caliber.
Thank you all for showing up, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye bye.